Welcome to God's Handiwork, our daily devotional. Remember that you are God's handiwork, created in Jesus Christ to do God's work, which God prepared in advance for you to do. This is Minister Alice from Dallas, Texas.
And then as we continue to Esther chapter 5, verse 6, and the king said unto Esther at the banquet of the wine, what is thy petition? So Esther goes to the king. So in those days, a queen couldn't just go to the presence of the king. She had to be invited. But Esther took the 3 day of prayer and fasting as a dare. She said, no matter what happens, whether I perish, I will go towards the king and put in my petition. So her petition, as we'll read, you'll see that the prayer and fasting worked. It touched the mind of God, and it is God who holds the heart of the king. He's the one who hardens or softens the heart of the king. So Esther makes her way to the king in chapter 5, verse 8. And the king says unto Esther, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted unto thee. What is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. So God gave Esther the glory that when she came to the presence of the king, that he said, whatever you want, I will give to you. So she boldly went. Now the ball was on Esther's court, because now the king is captivated with her looks and she's got the glory of God. So he's saying, whatever you want. Verse 7, then Esther answered and said, my petition, my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman, who is that ruler, that like prime minister who was causing trouble, trying to bring destruction to the children of Israel, come to the banquet that I may prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king has said. So her request at that moment was, I'm going to make dinner for you. Come with this person and I will let you know what my request is. So fast forward, we move to Esther chapter 7. So you see, God gave her wisdom. She wasn't hasty in deciding what to say. She didn't just say, oh, I need to tell you what's going on. She had a plan. So God will give you a plan, even as we start our prayer and fasting, to be able to fight the enemy. So as we can see here, Haman was the enemy of the Israelites. He wanted to get the Jews to be killed. So Esther had a plan. So as we read in Esther chapter 7, verse 1 to 6, so the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of the wine, what is the petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Verse 3, then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in their sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. Verse 4, for we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondsmen and bondswomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy would not countervail the king's damage. Verse 5, then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he and where is he does presume in this heart to do so? Verse 6, and Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. So look at that strategy. So Esther goes, she prays and fasts, corporate fasting, everyone's fasting. This is serious business. We're going to be destroyed, but our God is going to save us. So she makes this dinner, invites the enemy and the king, so the king can be the judge. So there's no hearsay. So God will make your enemies be ashamed in front of everyone. He will uplift you. He will manifest in front of everybody. So Esther tells the king, this is what's going on. Somebody wants to destroy me and my people. Then the king gets angry because that's his bride, right? The glory of God is upon her. She's got the favor of God, and the enemy is right there. And she says, this guy sitting right here is the one who wants to destroy us. So the king gets mad and he's like, oh my goodness, this is not going to happen. So fast forward, chapter 8. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen, and Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. So the king is angry. He gets this guy, Haman, who's now the enemy, thrown out. Esther is now in charge for real. She's in charge. She takes over his house and she tells the king, I got the message through my uncle Mordecai. So the king is also, because of Esther's love for her people, and he wants that connection with Mordecai, he now brings in Mordecai because of her relationship to her. So God will bless people because of their relationship to them. So the Jews were all rescued because of Esther, and so did Mordecai. And the king took off his ring, which is the symbol of his majesty, right? Because that's how they used to sign the documents with the seal. The king had a seal, which he had taken from Haman and gave it to Mordecai. So Haman was the prime minister. So now he's out of a job, he's fired. And now Mordecai is the big guy, he's the prime minister, and he gets the ring. Now he's running the show. Now this is the God we serve. So this prayer and fasting is gonna move mountains. There'll be breakthroughs, the things that you thought that were impossible. This God of the impossible, he will work it out for us. Esther chapter 8 verse 3. Esther spoke yet again before the king and fell down at his feet and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite and the device that he had devised against the Jews. And the king held out the golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther rose and stood before the king and said, if it please the king that if I have found favor in your sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha and Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews, which are all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Verse 7. Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him that have hanged unto the gallows, because he laid his hands upon the Jews. Look at that. So the enemy of the Jews was hanged. So God publicly displayed the enemy. So God will display our enemy. Whatever it is that is holding you down that you'll be fasting for. If it's an addiction, if it is a fight that you want God to fight for you at your job, to find that way in your ministry, anything that you're praying God for. So the last verse that we're going to be reading is verse 8. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. Oh my goodness. For the writing which is written is the king's name, and seal with the king's ring, that no man shall reverse. So Esther is in charge now. She has found favor with the king. He said, you know what, take this ring. You have my permission. So what you seal, it is me who is sealing it. Now that just takes me to a whole different level. So that's the end of our reading for today. Take care. See you soon.